All right, welcome everybody. Welcome to Talkin Investing. I'm Tom. I am flying solo today. George has been under the weather lately, as you guys know. In addition to that, it is his birthday, so he will not be joining us today. He might join us in the chat, but for today, it's going to be just me. So welcome everybody. Welcome. I see a lot of members. Welcome to all the members. Welcome to what was a good day, a nice day after today. We had some huge news this week, obviously. So we're going to go through that regarding Ethereum, regarding Ethereum ETFs. I will tell you guys, I got this one way wrong. I want to dig into what happened and why I think I was wrong about this and what it might mean going forward and how it affects Bitcoin and how it affects the Bitcoin miners. So I also want to take a look at what the Bitcoin miners did this week. This was a very green day today, which was good. There was a couple of days this week that were not good at all, but the Bitcoin miners actually did manage to have another really, really nice week. So this is about the 5 or 6 week trend here where we're starting to move in the right direction, and we got some big, big moves today. So we'll go through, just to talk about the top two. Iris Energy was up 10.6% today, and Core Scientific was up 15.59% today. I think I also have their warrants pulled up. The warrants did even better than the stock, so Core Scientific was the big winner on the day. Iris Energy and Core were the big winners on the day. They were the big winners on the week. We'll look at that schedule as well. So a bunch to go through. And a wild ride, and I really think I think they sucked the life out of people in the middle of this week. And I'm going to go to the one-day chart and kind of tell you what I mean by that. So we had this was Monday of this week, and it was a gigantic up day. It was a breakout day. You know, we've had some big green candles. We just had one the previous Wednesday and then this Monday, but then we had 3 days in a row. Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday was just down, down, down. And it seemed like, we had topped out and, things were moving in the wrong direction. In the middle of that, we get the Ethereum spot ETFs, and that didn't really move the needle. Now, we'll look at Ethereum as well, because it did move the needle on Ethereum. There was a big heads up. A few days before this happened, there was a gigantic shift, and all of a sudden there was a bunch of activity between the SEC and the companies looking for the Ethereum spot ETFs, and I can't remember who it was, but a large financial institution or analyst came out and said, we've changed our odds from 25% to 75%, and on that news, things took off. Ethereum took off. Bitcoin went along for the ride. Usually Bitcoin drives the bus, but Ethereum drove the bus this week for sure. So you'll see, like, that news came out on Monday, and that was simultaneous with this big, big up day on Monday. And if I go to Ethereum, look at the day Ethereum had on Monday. So while Bitcoin had a nice day, when that news came out, and again, this was not the news of the approval. This was basically that there were signs that all of a sudden, for the months preceding, the conventional wisdom was that this wasn't going to happen in May. I thought this was not going to happen in May. I really thought the Ethereum ETFs would not get approved on this. This was a deadline, I think, for the Van Eck Ethereum or ETF, spot ETF in particular. But as happened with Bitcoin, they all got approved. So, this day was up almost 20%, and it continued to run the next day. So Monday and Tuesday, and remember, these got approved, Thursday, right? But it was Monday and Tuesday that was the gigantic move. So the market knew on Monday and Tuesday a 23% move to the upside, and you can see that held. We've been sideways since then. So the spot ETH ETFs are not trading yet. I'm going to talk more about that because this is another difference between what happened with Bitcoin and what's happening with Ethereum. So there'll be more news over time on that. But, from a price action standpoint, if you guys remember, there was some immediate downward pressure. There was a very, very short-term sell the news for Bitcoin. And, but obviously we then recovered, got to new all-time highs. I just want to interrupt. Sour Melon Gaming member for 15 months. Thank you so much for being a member. And Sour Melon Gaming said, thanks, Tom, for everything. Ignore the haters. These 15 months changed everything for me. Was in a bad spot in June of 2022 when I found you. Happy birthday, George. So, yes, happy birthday to George from Sour Melon Gaming. And hopefully he's enjoying his birthday night with his family. Tim Brothers, thank you for being a member. And thank you for the super chat. Much appreciated. Tom, what is your strategy with BitX? I am just holding, waiting for Bitcoin to increase. So I'm doing the same thing, Tim. So obviously I have to always tell everybody, none of this is financial advice. So, please take everything here from me and everybody with, a grain of salt inside of your own due diligence. But BitX is a position that I've built out. So I'm very Bitcoin heavy. I hold a bunch of the Bitcoin miners, and then I hold BitX, which for those of you who don't know is trading. It's a futures trading that's roughly a 2x leverage on Bitcoin. That is not perfect. Today was actually a day where it was a tiny bit off to the downside. It's been extremely accurate over the last few months, but today was a little bit off, but still, not materially, in my opinion. You're still getting a big, very nearly 2x leverage. For me, I'm a buy and hold person. So, my price target for this bull market, we are nowhere near my Bitcoin price target for this bull market. So I will buy and hold. Now, for the swing traders out there, if that's something you're comfortable with, and, to a certain extent, swing trading is trying to time the market, but I know, there's a lot of people that make a lot of money in swing trading. So my guess is the volatility will continue in a massive way. So some of you may, get in and get out and get in and get out. There will be people that end up on the right side of that equation. I'm usually not one of those people historically. So, I have learned over the years that for me, just buy, if I have conviction in something, I set a price target, I have a plan, I try to buy and hold. Will I buy some put options from time to time if I think there's some imminent catalyst that's going to be maybe bad news? That's about as far as I would go. But yeah, I'm holding my BitX for quite some time. Obviously, I will, because it's a leverage trade, and a lot of the members have pointed out, these leverage trades, these 2x, 3x leverage ETFs, if things go sideways, these erode, and you will lose your money. If the underlying asset just goes sideways, these typically tend to go down for a couple of different reasons, including but not limited to the fees they charge. But right now, inside of this type of a bull market, I intend to hold BitX. I think I expect that to more than double. Again, that is not financial advice. That's my personal price target. So I would expect BitX to, I think, significantly more than double from here. So I'm not selling yet. Fortunately, I'm in there for a very good price. I'm not adding any more to that position. So, but I am going to hold it till what I think will be, I think the peak of this bull market is further down the road. Now, just even this week is a perfect example. We saw, a big up day on Monday. For the people that swing trade, if you got out or you did something at the end of the day on Monday, and then you had Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday were red, and got back in and made some more money on Friday. That's not my thing. And there are people that do it. But I will say, please be careful if you're swing trading or day trading. If you don't know how to do that, walk before you run is all I guess I would say. The Real Gary Ginsler, member for 13 months. Thank you, The Real Gary Ginsler. Gary says, China, as planned, dumped and pumped. All right, so the Real Gary Ginsler is saying China was responsible for the dump and the pump. So We'll take a look at the chart. I still think we're in a very healthy Bitcoin chart. I know we had 3 red days in a row, and we did have a dump after a big pump on Monday for Bitcoin. I'm still on the Ethereum chart here. Ethereum, a gigantic 23% move in 2 days for Ethereum, leading up to what turned out to be the approval of all of the Ethereum ETFs. So, for those people that have been waiting and waiting and waiting on Ethereum, they started to get paid off nicely this week. I'm not in Ethereum. Again, not financial advice, but for those of you not familiar with the channel, or if you're new here, speaking of which, if you're new here, if you could please, or if you're not new here, if you could please smash the like button. It does help the stream out in real time in a big, big way. We've demonetized our live streams so that you guys don't get all these commercial interruptions. But as a result, it keeps us a little bit less in the algorithm. So smashing the like button does help us out a lot in real time. So if you're willing to do that, if you enjoy this content, it's much appreciated. We're at 34 likes. We're going for 100 likes. So help us if you can. Okay, so let's see. All right, we should get to this Ethereum situation here. And I know I know a lot of you are Bitcoin people. I'm a Bitcoin person, and this channel obviously focuses on Bitcoin and even more so the Bitcoin miners. So we definitely will talk about all that. And I do want to show a chart of what the Bitcoin miners did. I updated this, through the end of today's activity for this week because, this week felt like a rough week to me. But, sometimes perception doesn't match reality. And this is where I get worried. Did a lot of people get washed out in back-to-back-to-back red days in Bitcoin just as we were having a breakout and everybody's expectation? I will tell you, I watched a lot of gigantic YouTubers in these 3 days talk about, Bitcoin's going to explode tomorrow or this week or whatever. And this is why I've backed off so much over the years on trying to figure out what's going to happen this week or what's going to happen tomorrow. Because, it's just, you guys know, this short-term game is very, very different than midterm to longer-term outlooks. To me, I can have a lot higher level of conviction in, whether it's a stock, so the Bitcoin mining stocks. And, one of the things I like about the Bitcoin mining stocks is we get a lot of information from these companies. So we get a monthly operational update from all of the top, I'm calling them, there's 12 that I think have kind of pulled away from the pack. Some more so than others, but, all those 12 give us a monthly operational update. So we got a lot of information. And then obviously we get quarterly reports. So, we really, for the Bitcoin mining stocks, I think, and these operational updates have gotten better and better and better. So they're getting more and more comprehensive. There's some more stuff I'd even like to see in there past what they show, and some are better than others, but I think it really helps, gauge, that midterm and long-term conviction for me that I have in these stocks. I want to jump to the real Gary Gensler. Again, thank you for being a member, and thank you for the super chat. Much appreciated. The real Gary Gensler said, seriously, nobody puts in more work than Tom and George. Congrats on having the best channel. Thank you, the real Gary Gensler. I appreciate that. That is nice to hear. And, that's encouraging words are always welcome. As with all channels, we get people that like us and people that don't like us, but I do try my best and I do put a lot of work into this. So thanks for noticing and noting that. And thanks so much for the super chat as well. Barry C said, I think Tom does most of the work. I mean, I do the grunt work for sure. I mean, there's no doubt. And George, George adds his perspective, and he's got a lot of other experiences as well. So, and I always think it's good to get multiple perspectives on things. And in addition to that, not just our two perspectives, but, thank you guys, particularly all of the members, but all of the subscribers as well, for the comments that you leave, and, for the thoughts and conversations we have on the members only live stream, and, in the Discord and all that. I know a lot of you guys have shared with each other, and all of that just helps. It helps on bad days when, things are rough and you're trying to stick in there, to have a group of people you can bounce ideas off of. And, sometimes those are the more, in my mind, those are the more important days. It's easy to be enthusiastic and gung-ho on, Monday when you have a gigantic green candle, but, hanging in there on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday when all of a sudden things seem to be heading in the wrong direction. Now, we had a nice day today. Today we were up. Bitcoin was up, over 3%. If you see IBIT, which is BlackRock's Bitcoin Spot ETF, it was up 3.11%. So, that was a nice 3% move to the upside. So you'll see today was a day. If you look on this same chart at the, I think you guys can see this. I'll move it up a little bit. So BitX today was up 6.03% on a day where BlackRock's ETF was up 3.11%. So that is a little bit less than a 2x today. There have been a lot of days where it's been, to the penny a 2x, but that's no guarantee with these leveraged plays. So, that's just to be forewarned. You do get these minor differences. And that's across the board for all these leveraged ETFs. They are not perfect. Jonathan, thank you very much for the super chat. Jonathan said, "Hi, Tom. Got some Coors calls. 20th of September, $5, up 100% on them. Any thoughts on a target for Coors pre-expiration?" So you've given yourself some good amount of time. In the crypto world, for a lot of other stocks, 90 days or 120 days is still pretty short term. And, these are by no means leap options, but I think you've given yourself a pretty good buffer there out to September. And for me, that gives you the entire summer. So I'm expecting a nice move to the upside for Bitcoin this summer. I'm expecting the Bitcoin miners to follow along at a minimum, if not lead, because they have been lagging dramatically. So they have some ground to make up. I'll show you some charts next where it looks like they've started to make up for that lost ground. They have a long way to go. They're still way behind. The Bitcoin miners have underperformed Bitcoin in 2024 dramatically. Now, they overperformed Bitcoin in 2023 fairly dramatically, but that was after a crypto winter where everything got wrecked in 2022. So, like I said, this can be a wild ride. The volatility is absolutely brutal. So 3 red days in a row is nothing. We had this, this whole period. This was months of, sideways consolidation here, and we ran up to a new all-time high, and this optimism was high, and then we get this pullback. But as always, I won't say always, but for the last 18 months, which was from the lows of the FTX situation in November, there have now been 5 corrections. All 5 have been anywhere from 20 to 23%. So this one was no different. From March 13th that was the top. That was Bitcoin's new all-time high at around 73,800 and change. From the top to the bottom was just a little over 23%. So, that was just like the 4 that came before it in the last, we're now about 18 months into this, and we've had 5 pullbacks. I expect more of these. And in fact, in the past, the volatility's been even greater than this for Bitcoin. We've gotten 35% pullbacks. One time in the middle of a bull market, we had a 55% pullback. So I don't think we're going to get that. I think we've started to, because of the ETFs And because of the continued adoption, now we've got some legislation we're going to talk about. In the United States, there's a couple of pieces of legislation that had some good news this week, although I think ultimately neither of them are going to get through. But it's just showing things are trending in the right direction. Adoption continues. For the Ethereum ETFs to get approved, I think that's another, next level of cryptocurrency adoption. And I think that cancels out a lot of the noise that we have been getting. The SEC has been the loudest voice in the room for a long time now. And, I think this was a gigantic reversal. And, as always, these types of things don't happen in one day, but it's another big piece of adoption. One of the bigger pieces, I think. Scott Richardson, thanks for being a member, and thank you for the super chat. Scott said, Mara news in Kenya. Your thoughts? So I think I have that press release up. Let me see if I have this. So my thoughts are, I think it's good news. I'm not exactly sure how to quantify this, but I will tell you, I'm coming around more and more. We're getting a constant stream of smaller pieces of news that, are not as easy to quantify from Marathon, but I think these are adding up to something bigger. Marathon's reach. Marathon is starting to have a huge global reach. And, they're the biggest Bitcoin miner. They may not be everybody's favorite Bitcoin miner. It's not my biggest holding. I do hold some Marathon stock. And I do think they have a very bright future ahead, in my opinion. And so this came out today. Marathon Digital Holdings enters into agreement with the Ministry of Energy and Petroleum of the Republic of Kenya to enhance Kenya's energy sector. So this is kind of a joint venture almost, if you will. Somewhere in here it says, I think they're going to be putting, not Marathon, Kenya is going to be putting $80 million. Let me see if I can find the exact words in here. I don't know why it's not jumping out at me. Okay, a joint venture steering committee will be established that will be staffed by both the MOEP and Marathon senior officials to ensure the development and implementation of these energy-related projects across the country, with projected foreign investments expected to exceed $80 million. This venture is poised to deliver economic benefits to the Kenyan economy and generate revenue for the total energy sector ecosystem. So, this is Marathon getting out ahead of the curve. Obviously, they're going to be participating. This is not just a partnership of goodwill. I imagine there's money going into this. And, I think ultimately this is Marathon trying to participate and become a part of whatever role Bitcoin miners have to play in Kenya's overall energy grid and improving and enhancing the energy grid. So there's money to be made here. And so, I can't point my finger and say, oh, this was adding this much exahash or this many dollar deal. But I do think this is just a stream of more and more. You can see Marathon's branches going out further and further. So I do think they're a little bit ahead of the field in this regard. So all the different Bitcoin miners have different strengths and weaknesses, and this is something Marathon seems to be very good at, in my opinion. Okay, Clive, thank you. First of all, thank you for being a member, and thanks for the super chat. Clive said, Tom, not sure why I do not have any position in iron since I value your analysis. No excuse. Well, don't feel bad, Clive. This is the hardest part. I think there's a lot of Bitcoin miners that are going to excel right now. Iris Energy, or Iron, is having its turn. It had a huge week this week, but I don't think it's going to be the only winner. So hopefully, Clive, you have other positions in other Bitcoin miners that are there's several of these companies, in my opinion, that still have a long run to the upside ahead of them. Now, with that, I will say the thing I've said 1,000 times that people are sick of hearing. I do think there's going to be winners and losers in this space. I've been saying that really since the bottom, since we bottomed out. I think that in this bull market, not all the Bitcoin miners are going to make it, and they're not all going to hit new all-time highs. So, this is not, in previous bull cycles, it was, pick a Bitcoin miner, throw a dart at a board, pick one at random, and you were probably going to be in great shape. Most of them hit new all-time highs by far in the last cycle. So I think some of them will in this cycle as well, but I think there's others that won't. So, Iris was the last position that I built out of all the Bitcoin mining positions that I have. So, and what I would love to have more. It's smaller than some of my other positions, but to just like you, Clive, I mean, I got what I got. It's not as much as I would have liked to have, but there's, we all have limited resources, and, there's no, as long as you feel good about the positions you have, I guess that's what I would say. Midway said, Tom had some good iron buys in the $4. Yeah, that's where I really built out my position. And I was dollar cost averaging. And then, now it's with this move off to the races. I did get one last chance. And I know some of you guys grabbed that opportunity on their, what I thought was by far the best press release that company has ever had. Game-changing press release. I think it was last Wednesday. Time flies. Maybe it was the previous Wednesday. They announced they're getting to 30 exahash by the end of the year instead of 20, and then 40 exahash in the first half of 2025. So, and they have purchase orders in place to buy the machines to do that. So while none of that is certain, obviously they've got a lot of work to do. They just hit 10 exahash right now, and they're talking about getting to 30 and then 40. So, execution, we talk about this. Executing these plans is going to be the next piece of the puzzle. If we want Iris Energy to get, its stock to get where it's going over time, they need to execute. But this year they have started to put a really good track record together of doing what they said they were going to do. In fact, they hit a couple of targets ahead of schedule, which in this industry, it has been few and far between. That is very difficult. So I'm encouraged with Iris Energy. I'll go to the chart right now of what these companies did this week, because I want to take a look, because a couple of these companies were off to the races, and really the Bitcoin miners are, I know a lot of people, particularly our members, but a lot of the viewers as well, have had a rough journey with these Bitcoin miners. And I just want to show you some time frames, because I do think we're starting to see things go in the right direction. So, who knows how long that'll take. The crypto, this part of the bull market can take a long time. We just had the halving. So, but I do think we're moving in the right direction. We are at 83 likes. If you guys could do us or me today a huge favor and smash the like button, it helps the stream out in real time. It is much appreciated. We demonetize ourselves during the live stream, so you guys don't have to deal with what apparently was turning into a massive amount of commercial interruptions. So hopefully you guys are not having to deal with that. All right, so let me go to that chart, and so this is what the Bitcoin miners did this week. So this is as of the close today. Obviously there's trading after hours, but as of the close today, the official close versus last Friday. So we put this out every week, and I'll refine this and put all my charts out over the weekend. We take a look at this on a lot of different time frames and in different ways. But if you look at Bitcoin was up 3% this week, although it didn't feel like it. We had that massive move to the downside, but, we quickly forget we just had a gigantic move to the upside. So we did end up 3% this week, and almost every single Bitcoin miner beat that, and most of them soundly beat that, right? These here, we did have some underperform. DigiHost was red today, so I'll go back to the big board quickly and just take a look. You'll see there's only one red number on this board. Argo Blockchain was at 0. DigiHost was red. For whatever reason, there always seems to be an outlier or two in this group, but by and large, this was a very big green day for the Bitcoin miners. And DigiHost was on small volume. I didn't see a press release. I didn't see an SEC filing. It was low volume. I don't know why they were red. This is just how it goes. There always seems to be one or two of these. But you can see for the most part, this was a really good day for the Bitcoin miners. So let's go back to that chart. So you have DigiHost down on the week, Argo Blockchain down on the week. So those were the worst two performers on the day. They were the worst two performers on the week. DMG at 0, Hut at up 1%. So those underperformed Bitcoin. Riot. So Riot is one of the ones we spend more time looking at because just from a market cap standpoint, and they're one of now 4 companies now that Iris has put themselves in that group. It was really 3 companies had pulled away from the pack in different measures. In terms of production, actually, Riot was not keeping up with its peers, which I would consider Marathon and now CleanSpark. So, production-wise, they were significantly behind, but they have just a little bit different of a schedule on their build out of their infrastructure. They're expecting to add a lot more exahash, but those 3 companies were the 3 that anticipated getting anywhere from, on the low end, 30, which was CleanSpark and Riot by the end of 2024. And then Marathon recently announced they expect to get to 50 exahash by the end of 2024. So those 3, and now Iris Energy has jumped into that group. They bumped their year-end target from 20 to 30. So, we'll see if that happens. So out of all those, Riot seemed to be the one that was lagging. Riot, I do think I've been saying for a while, I think Riot, there's a few of these that are really going to need to prove themselves based on previous performance. They're going to need to prove themselves before the market, fully prices in what they say they're going to do. So I think it's a difference between what they say they're going to do and what they're actually going to do. And you're going to see Iris Energy. So up at the top of this list, in a week where Bitcoin was up 3%, you have 2 Bitcoin miners. You have Core Scientific up 30% and Iris Energy up 30%. I mean, those are giant moves. You got some other big moves as well, but I want to focus on Iris Energy. Had a great week last week. They're up 30% again this week. So there's a company that, they had a big announcement and the market is rewarding it for them. And that's because the last time they had a big announcement, they said they were going to do A, B, C, D, E, F, G. And so far they're doing exactly what they said they were going to do. And so those companies, I do think, will be rewarded more in real time as they make announcements about what they plan to do going forward. Now, if they fail to do so, they'll be punished later. But you can see Iris Energy had a big move to the upside. So in a week where Riot was up 3%, Iris Energy was up 30%. Now that still leaves them at a much, much smaller market cap than Riot. Marathon is the largest by market cap out of all the Bitcoin miners. It was up 9% on a week where Bitcoin was up 3%. These are the moves that we want to see. And like I said, even with these moves, and I'll show you another chart that was the 5 weeks prior to this. Even with those 2 things put together, year to date, almost all these Bitcoin miners are still in the red year to date in a year where Bitcoin is up significantly. So, the trend is starting to move in the right direction, but I think there's, a lot of room left. So let's just take a look at, I want to look at Core Scientific and Iris Energy had these big weeks. So prior to this was as of last Friday. So Iris Energy was down 16% year to date. They were up 30% this week. So they are now in the green. So there's in 1 week, they went from, in the negative to, pretty healthy in the positive. Core Scientific was down 33%. They were up 30% this week. So they're at almost 0. Cypher was down 7%. So this week, Cypher was up 6%. So they're at, almost 0. So you can see a lot of these that were, and this list was big time. All these were big time in the red. So more and more of these are creeping towards 0, getting into the green. Some of them have already moved into the green. DMG was flat on the week, so they didn't get there. Marathon was down 17%. And what do we say? They were up 9% on the week, so they're getting close to 0. TerraWolf at one point was green. They pulled back a little bit, but let's see what they did this week. So TerraWolf was up 6%. So they're still not back to green, but they have been bouncing between green and red, and I expect more, more good news ahead for them. I think a lot of these companies are going to get back into the green. But if we go back to this year-to-date chart, as I talk about winners and losers, I keep saying, there's the market. The market is leaving some of these companies behind. Argo Blockchain, Stronghold, Gree, Mawson, Any, these are still down 60 to 70% as of last Friday. Now, let's see, did any of these have a breakout this week? Because some of these small companies can make very big moves. These micro cap, nano cap stocks can make big moves. So Any was up 21%. Mawson was up 27%. So, that's still going to leave them down quite a bit, but it helps move in the right direction. So we're going to keep our eye on this. Again, I will update all of these charts for what happened here this week on this chart. But this was another good week. So I want to go to, that leads me to, we talked about on April 16th, we basically talked about, I thought, in my opinion, the Bitcoin miners had put in a local low that I thought was going to hold. And I thought, we kind of turned the corner and we were headed into, better days ahead. So far, this has held up really, really well. As of last Friday, there was one Bitcoin miner that was below that low on April 16th. All the rest were above, and most of them were way above. So once I update this chart, this was 4.5 weeks. So adding this week, it'll be 5.5 weeks. But I think you're going to see, this is getting better and better and better. Let's see what Hive did this week. Hive was up 8%. So they have now recaptured this bottom, but they did pop below it for a little bit. And I talked a couple of weeks in a row. I feel like Hive was in a very interesting spot. Having gone below this, I don't see Hive as being an underperformer. That's just my personal opinion. So I'm just not sure why, this stock got a little bit more beat up than some of the other ones. Bitfarms I talked about, even though this is a company that I've been investing in for years, I understand why the market's hesitant here. I think that there's great things ahead for Bitfarms, but most of the growth plans they announced haven't happened yet. So I think this is another one like Riot where the market's waiting to see those things happen. So, that's the good news, bad news. If you're holding that like I am, then maybe, it hasn't done as well as you had hoped, but I'm hoping there's, better days ahead for companies like Bitfarms. And they're targeting 12 exahash by June 30th. Well, that is approaching quickly. We're just 2 monthly operational reports away from seeing where they're at on that time frame. And, even if they don't get 100% of the way there, if we see improvement over those 2 months in a row and them heading, somewhere in the neighborhood of on track, I think you're going to see Bitfarms. And Bitfarms had a really good week this week as well. Where's Bitfarms? So Bitfarms was up 15% this week. So I'm just going to get a poll going. I'm going to try and keep this simple. I had one more option. All right, just to kind of get everybody's sentiment here, what do you guys think Bitcoin's next move is going to be? So 74,000, and technically that would be a new all-time high. Let's go to the chart. Actually, we'll go to the 1 day. I have $73,835 on March 13th. So this is the Coinbase chart. So that's where it reached on Coinbase on that day. So basically that would be getting back to its, and actually taking out by a little bit, its previous all-time high. Or are we going to go back down and retest this red line at just under 62,000? This was really strong support. I know we did get below it a little bit, but I thought this held up pretty well. You know, at the bottom, we did dip for, 2 days into this target box, which was that 20 to 25% pullback. So we got right to that 23%, just like all the previous, pullbacks. So, are we going to go back down? You guys expecting us to go back down and retest this, or, is the next move up? And I will just tell you, not to bias anybody, and I know everybody has their own opinion anyway, I think the next move is up. I think we had a pretty clear breakout. We'll take a look at that chart as well. I don't think we've undone that. I don't think any of this price action undid the breakout that we had. So, when we have a breakout, things don't necessarily run exactly to where, the target price is. So there'll be some volatility in the middle, no doubt. But I do think that, for me, I think the next move still is up. And we found some really natural resistance. You'll see we had a green line here at around 71,200. And we got, pretty much right to that green line. And that turned out to be resistance. We got rejected on this, but that oftentimes happens. And before we break through certain lines of resistance, we can get rejected once or twice or however many times. And then, ultimately, if the next move is up, obviously, then we will break through. And then, from there, I don't see any strong lines in between that and the previous all-time high. And then, after that, obviously, we're in blue sky, uncharted territory, and we'll see where we go from there. I see, just so you guys know, it's really hard when I'm on my own to keep up with the chat, but I do see one jumping out at me. Pogo, thanks for being a member, said, "Hey, Tom, your thoughts on BTBT?" So I don't hold any BTBT, but I do think it's a strong company. I don't know, their Bitcoin mining part of their company, they're still under 3 exahash. They gave generic, if I remember their operational reports correctly, they generically said we expect to get to 6 exahash. So unlike a lot of the other companies, they're not a part of my 12. There's 4 companies that I have in the middle. I have 12 companies that I think have really clearly specified what they're going to do on the Bitcoin mining side of things. Now, a lot of these companies are looking to diversify revenues. And if you're looking at that, the 2 strengths that Digital has, in my opinion, are, number one, they have a strong balance sheet. So, it's not a Marathon, Marathon and Riot that have, $1 billion+ in liquidity. It's strong like that, but, they have next to no debt or no debt. They do have a hodl position in Bitcoin and Ethereum. They're staking that Ethereum, that's, to me, I don't get that part of the business. It's, less than 1% of their revenue, I think. So, but that's not the part I'm talking about. They're high performance computing. They have one customer that they have signed a gigantic contract with. And that, if that stays on track and they can build out their data centers and perform, and that contract, comes to fruition in full, they're already receiving money on that, then that is a legit company that has 2 revenue streams. I would like to see some more clarity out of them on the Bitcoin mining side of things. So they've said a couple of times they plan to get to 6 exahash, but I'd like to see, a definitive purchase agreement. They did have a huge purchase order for high performance computing machines. There's a multi-million dollar purchase order. Well, I'd like to see them do the same thing on the Bitcoin mining side. So they're a group that I have in the middle, from just as far as their Bitcoin mining operations go. They're not going to catch up to the well, it's really 8. So there's 8 that have announced, big plans, basically plans to get to 20 exahash sometime in the next year plus. There's 4 after that, and that's the 12. So they are a part of my 12. but they're in that second group, which is 4 that, I'll just tell you what the 4 are. In my opinion, you've got BitDeer, Hut, Hive, and BitDigital that, I think all of those companies have their strengths, but they just don't have the plans. None of those companies, if you go up from there, all the other companies basically have put plans together to get to at least 20 exahash, some 30 or 40 or 50. You've got Riot talking about getting to 100 exahash, although that's not until 2027. And to me, they're getting a little bit ahead of themselves on that. They're at 12.6 exahash right now. I'd rather see some reality and get to, 15 and 20 and 25 and 30 before they start talking about 100. But having said that, I do hold some of their stock, and I'm still bullish on Riot. I know they do need to execute, and this is the time. They've built out the facilities. They've been not in full. They have a gigawatt facility they're looking to finish building out, and but I think the first 400 megawatts they've brought online, and they expect to be adding machines. So I expect to see, the next 3 monthly operational reports in a row, to me, really should be good news out of Riot. And I will be disappointed. I will officially be disappointed if we don't see, over the next 3, I think, monthly operational reports. That would be a disappointment. Hello, McNally Money. Welcome to the live stream. I just noticed you in there. I do have a hard time keeping up with the chat when I'm on my own, but I did notice you in there, so thanks for joining us. McNally Money said, hope everyone made some money. Me too. Tom, we need to do a live video together, your channel and ours. So we do. I know I've been a little bit out of the loop. I've been keeping super busy. My day job has been keeping me a little busier than usual, but I know, we did that together one time, not live. That would be fun as well. So we'll definitely tie in on that. And thanks for joining us. And McNally Money says BitDigital is a beast in the making. So McNally feels good about that. So I mean, I think they got a lot of things going for them. For me, I just want to see more of the Bitcoin mining portion of what they're doing. But, out of all the companies that have talked about the high performance computing, they did land a giant, for the size of their company, a really big contract. And, they're making it happen. So we'll see. The White Rabbit says hello from Texas. Well, hello to Texas. Yeah, let us know where you're from, everybody. I know we got people from all over. I know Bitcoin is around the world. So welcome wherever you're from. We're at 121 likes. Thank you, everybody. If you're just joined us or if you haven't smashed the like button, it does help the live stream out in real time. So it would be much appreciated. I want to get to a couple of these. We haven't, we talked at the top of the stream about the Ethereum ETF. So I want to get to a couple of specific articles that came out and talk about what happened there a little bit, because obviously that is a big, big impact on the Bitcoin mining, the Bitcoin / crypto universe. And, as a function of that, the Bitcoin miners, I know they're not mining ETH anymore, but it's all part of the same ecosystem, and a crypto adoption is good for one, good for all. And some predictions from some people on some other things yet to come. I think this was super exciting news. And then I do want to get to a bunch of U.S. legislation that's being bounced around that moved forward. Again, I don't think any of it's going to end up going through this time around, in my opinion, but there was a bunch of progress, and I think, probably most of you are on the same page. We're not necessarily all big regulation people, but some of this regulation and potential legislation can be a good thing, because it opens the doors to clarify things, and that creates more potential adoption going forward. And that's what this whole thing is about. There are so many trillions and trillions, and that sounds like an exaggeration, but there's just trillions upon trillions of dollars, just just BlackRock has $9 or $10 trillion, according to them. Vanguard has another $9 trillion. We've got endowment funds in the United States and around the world. We have sovereign nation funds. There's an inconceivable amount of money. Most of those pools of money have not even begun to dip their toe in the water here on cryptocurrencies. For most of them, they will start with Bitcoin, and now obviously Ethereum just took a giant leap forward as well. So all of these are good steps along the way, and all of these to me increase my conviction in that Bitcoin will do its thing in this 4-year cycle. There's a bunch of other things ahead, I think, that we're going to see that are catalysts for Bitcoin. And, again, there's going to be volatility along the way. If you can't stomach volatility, this is just not the portion of the investing universe for you. And that's not a negative statement or a criticism. Everybody has a different threshold for volatility. And this is one of the most volatile parts of the market that I've ever seen. And it's not easy, and your emotions can, especially, depending on what level you've invested. So, as always, please be careful. None of this is financial advice, but what I would tell everybody is please be careful and only invest an amount that you can afford to invest. And you guys know your own financial situations. Obviously, only you know your own situation. So let's just get to a couple of different releases. Okay, spot ETH ETFs receive official approval from the SEC. So this was 22 hours ago. This was yesterday, basically late in the afternoon here where I am. In a second landmark decision this year, the United States Securities and Exchange Commission has given the regulatory green light to spot ETH exchange-traded funds. I've highlighted a list of those funds. So just like Bitcoin, they didn't pick one. There was a deadline for one, and I think that one was Van Eck. But they just went, this is they're either okay or they're not okay. So they did the same thing here with Ethereum that they did with Bitcoin. They approved them all, but there is an important distinction. You'll see May 23rd filing, the SEC approved the 19B-4 filings for all of these. I think there's, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So there's 8 of these. Okay, so they are approved, but there is another piece to this approval process, and I have another article that talks about that piece is not yet done. So these are not trading yet. So when they did the spot Bitcoin ETFs, they did all this very quickly in a 24-hour period. There's I think S-1 is the other one, but I'll see that in the next, if I have that correct. All of that happened in rapid succession, and within 1 day, the ETFs were open and trading. It doesn't look like that's what's going to happen this year, and I've been getting different reports all day long. I've seen people. Well, I'll read you. Let me get just a couple others. So there was another step. This is U.S. SEC approves exchange applications to list the spot Ether ETF. So this is just, this is a technicality, but the U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission on Thursday approved applications from the NASDAQ, the Chicago Exchange, and the New York Stock Exchange to list the exchange-traded funds. So it's not enough for them to approve them. They have to approve these exchanges to list them. So that step was complete as well. So here's where it dives a little bit deeper that I wanted to get into. Spot Ether ETFs approved, but Gary Gensler didn't vote for them. Now that headline's a little misleading, and we'll get into that. He didn't vote at all. There wasn't a vote, so we'll go through that. So it's not like he voted against them, and then it says, here's why. Unlike the spot Bitcoin ETFs, which were approved via voting by 5-member committee, and it's worth noting, of the 5 members, I think the vote was 3-2, but Gary Gensler was the deciding vote, and he voted in favor of the Bitcoin spot ETFs. So the spot Ether ETFs were approved by the Trading and Markets Division of the SEC. So you'll see for the commission by the Division of Trading and Markets pursuant to delegated authority. So this was a decision, not a vote. So unlike the Bitcoin spot ETFs, ETFs approved via voting by a 5-member committee, including the SEC Chief Gary Gensler. Spot ETHs were approved by the Trading and Market Division of the SEC. The SEC approved the 19B-4 filing. Then I just want to go on to a couple other important notes in here. Let's see. Okay. So I can't speak to the validity of this, but here in this article it says, however, not everyone seems to be convinced by, and I skipped this analysis up here. Basically, the SEC was saying this is typical. They can't vote on every single thing every single time. So this is a pretty typical way things get approved. You know, it's nothing unusual going on here. But one user on X highlighted that a commissioner could challenge the decision within the next 10 days. And the main reason for the delegated authority was to hide the votes as they might be seen as political. So this was a way for people not to have to vote yes or no. And, you know, particularly in my mind, Gary Gensler did not have to cast a vote either way, you know, because he has been pounding the table regarding Ethereum as well as many other things. You know, he's in litigation. The SEC's in litigation with a lot of the crypto exchanges, Coinbase included, and, you know, a list of cryptocurrencies. And, you know, they've been basically saying they think, you know, in their minds, Ethereum's potentially a security and it should fall under the SEC. So all of that aside, this thing did get approved. I would be, although this person is pointing out that somebody could challenge this in the next 10 days, I mean, I would just be floored if that happened. So I don't think that's a realistic scenario in my opinion, but maybe technically that could be correct. They say the approval was issued via delegated authority, which means there wouldn't be a public commissioner votes to see, but it also means any commissioner, maybe Crenshaw, can typically challenge and ask for a review/vote. So I'm not expecting that. I don't hear anybody else talking about that out there, so I don't anticipate that at all, but that may technically be true. Okay, but this is more important. Another major difference between the approval process for the two crypto ETFs is that all 11 Bitcoin ETFs started trading the day after their approval, as they also got S1 form clearance. So spot Ether ETFs might be weeks or months away from debuting on exchanges, as the ETF filers have yet to receive the S1 SEC registration. I will tell you, this language right here, weeks or months, I saw this in multiple articles. I don't know if they all go back to the same source quote, you know, and it's one of those things where, you know, you're just reading the same thing over and over. But so I don't know if anybody knows. Drop in the comments if you guys know anything more definitive than this. But everything that I could see, including an interview on one of the, I can't remember which financial channel it was, but they basically said the same exact language. It could be weeks or months. You know, we don't know when these S1s will get approved, and we don't know when these will start trading. So to me, the upside of that is, like, ultimately, if they've gone this far, they're going to approve the S1s. I think it'll be sooner than later. And that means that, you know, the real part of the boom for this, for Ethereum in particular, but I think for the cryptocurrency universe in general, once these start trading, that's when the money inflow comes. So that's what this is all about, creating access to pools of money that otherwise would not be buying cryptocurrency. So yes, you know, was this a buy the news, sell the news? All that's happened so far is the news. These have not actually opened and started trading. So there's no money inflow happening into these yet, but there will be, assuredly. And so as a result of that, this is even though this already happened, it remains actually a future catalyst, in my opinion, for the entire crypto universe. And, you know, so you guys can have your opinion. In fact, I'll put the next poll up. So Bitcoin's next move thank you. We got a lot of votes on this. 69% think we're going to 74,000. So the majority, a healthy majority, think the next move is up. 26% think we're headed sideways. I said 67 to 70,000. And then 5% think we're headed down. So that is very encouraging. It seems like most of us feel like, you know, at worst, maybe we're going to consolidate sideways a little bit and still the next move is up, which is consistent with the fact that I think we had, you know, a technical breakout that was confirmed in a lot of different ways. And I went through this, you know, on the members only stream and maybe even last Friday. You know, just because you have multiple confirmations on something, none of this is a guarantee. So as you look at the technicals and however else you want to look at this, that's increasing your chances, but you know, there are no guarantees. Certainly world events, you know, other things could interfere in the short term and the midterm, but to me it does look like very strong, you know, a very strong breakout to the upside, and I'll get to some charts on that. And then we'll find out when are these ETFs going to start trading. So I'm going to end this poll and then just ask what I think is a natural question. Let me just fix a spelling error real quick. Okay, so are the Ethereum ETFs going to take money away from the Bitcoin ETFs? Is this going to be a situation where this is just more, you know, more awareness, more adoption into the crypto universe? Or do any of you think that, you know, some people that jumped into the Bitcoin full force are going to say, hey, instead of putting even more money into cryptocurrency, let me split a little bit of what I put into the Bitcoin and move it over to the Ethereum? I will tell you, I personally believe, and I don't know in the first, you know, day or two or three, but I think in the midterm and the long term, I don't think that Ethereum is going to steal from Bitcoin. So, you know, you never know what that knee-jerk reaction is over a very short period of time. But I do think that both of these, all the Bitcoin ETFs, in my opinion, are still a small fraction of what they're going to be, you know, 18 months from now, and certainly 5 years from now. And obviously the Ethereum ETFs have not even yet begun. So that, you know, that leads to the next natural question. And I've seen a couple of people mention this, and you know, Solana. So I see John Q. Public saying Solana will be the next ETF. And I think I have an article right here. Ether Spot ETF approval would raise expectations Solana could also be classified a commodity. So I don't necessarily know that this, I think there's a leap here. I don't necessarily know that just because they approved an ETF that it's a commodity. I think you're going to still see Gary Gensler argue, or maybe not. Maybe they will give up this argument. And again, there was no vote, so it's not like he voted for this. So we'll see. But there is massive speculation that Solana's next. So when the Bitcoin spot ETFs came out, in the statement, in the press release from the SEC, they pounded the table that do not assume that just because there's a Bitcoin ETF's approval, that any other cryptocurrency is going to get ETF approval, right? One thing's got nothing to do with the other, and he tended to indicate to not expect that. Well, here we go. You know, we got all the Ethereum ETFs approved in May. And I will tell you, for those who have followed this channel, I thought there was next to no chance that this was going to happen in May. Everything seemed to indicate that I did think there was a chance this would happen by the end of the year. I felt that was a decent chance. But to happen at what is this really kind of the first deadline, the Bitcoin ETF process was just enormous amount of time, effort, energy back and forth between the SEC, and it finally happened. And now here Ethereum, this was the day that everybody circled, and once again, and June or January 10th or 11th, whatever it was the day everybody circled for Bitcoin, and it happened. So here we have the exact same thing. So the SEC, for all of its talk, all they're doing now is approving. So I feel like there's been just a fundamental shift, and Gary Gensler may hate every step of this, but at some point this feels like capitulation that, hey, I don't want to say the fight is over, because there's still a lot of lawsuits going on between the SEC and various entities, and I don't know that they're done, but I feel like a corner's been turned here. I mean, it's hard to put the genie back in the bottle now that you've got 11 Bitcoin ETFs, 8 Ethereum ETFs, and now here we are, we're one day later, and we're talking about potentially Solana ETFs. So I would say I would be surprised if this happened, but now I won't be surprised, because I thought Ethereum was their absolute, if they were going to draw a line in the sand, this is where it was going to be, because it was hard to draw a line with Bitcoin. Even the SEC had long since said, they had conceded that Bitcoin is a commodity. And so, that part of the fight for them was over. So the Bitcoin ETFs were not a shock to me. Ethereum, they've been still pounding the table on. So for this to happen really tells me maybe there's more of a shift behind the scenes going on than I realized. And, maybe a lot of this fight is already over. Hello from Poland, I see. Hello to Poland. Welcome. So we're very split on, is ETH going to take money away from the Bitcoin ETFs? We're at 53% yes, 47% no. So very close to a split decision there. You can vote on that. Obviously, voting is free. And if you can also smash the like button if you just got here, it does help the stream out in real time. It is much appreciated. And if you are not yet subscribed, we seem to be just under 21,000. We have stalled at just under 21,000 subscribers. We had a big boost and then a little bit of a stall again. So, and I think that had a lot to do with, a couple of months of Bitcoin going sideways and consolidating. A lot of people got bored. A lot of retail investors left. If you look at a lot of the Google analytics, searches for Bitcoin and Bitcoin ETFs and all that stuff. And certainly with the price action on the Bitcoin miners, that was a long, hard, most of this year has been red. But let me bring that to the next chart. We may have taken a quick look at this, but I just want to show you guys this again if we haven't. So, two charts. Well, year to date, we took a look at this earlier in the stream if you were or were not here. All these were in the red. This was as of last Friday, so I will update these as I always do over the weekend. CleanSpark was the only one in the green. Iris Energy had a huge week this week. They will be in the green now. 2 or 3 of these are going to be down only 1 or 2%. So, I think over the next few weeks, you're going to see several of these turn green. That still doesn't mean they've caught up to Bitcoin. And really, an investment in a Bitcoin miner, we expect these to be doing better than Bitcoin, right? We expect to get leveraged in the other direction, 2x or 3x over time. And we're certainly not getting that this year at all. So I will say, particularly, there's some history, longer history on the NASDAQ with Marathon and Riot. A lot of the other companies were not listed on the NASDAQ in the last bull market, or they listed themselves in the middle of that bull market. So, but with Marathon and Riot, they were in the entire bull run. And at the previous halving, both of those companies were down about 80% off of their highs from the previous cycle. So that is roughly where they are right now. So if I go to that chart as of last Friday, you'll see Marathon's down 77% from its high from the previous cycle. Riot's down 78% from its high from the previous cycle. So back in 2020, after the halving happened in 2020, both of these were down about 80% from their highs from 2017. So in that regard, they're taking a similar journey. But this is the frustrating part of the journey. And the second piece of the puzzle, there's no guarantee. Just because these did turn around and go from, down 80% from their previous high to new all-time highs, that's what happened, from 2020 to November of 2021. So that's the journey they took last time around. So, I don't know. I'm expecting some of them to take that journey again this time, but we will see. Certainly, I'm not expecting all these. In fact, these stocks that are down 98 and 99%, nothing's impossible, but to me, it's almost unimaginable that these could ever reach their previous all-time highs. Some of these in the 90s, it's even still hard to imagine that by the end of this cycle, they're going to be back to their all-time highs. But I think, from these that are in the low 80s and 70s, I do think there's a bunch of these that can hit new all-time highs. So I do think we will see some of that, but only time will tell. And there's an awful lot of room left to the upside, even if they don't get to their previous all-time highs. But I do think some of these will. That's just, that's my opinion. That's not financial advice. And we got a long way to go. And this year, 2024, has been very rough. So, if you guys are still in this and, you've been able to participate in some of the gains over the last month and, 5 weeks now, then congratulations, because, you suffered through a lot of this. But if we look from those lows, which is now, as of last Friday, it was 4.5 weeks. It's now 5.5 weeks. And when I update this, you're going to see some of these Bitcoin miners are really, over the last 5+ weeks, some of these are really off to the races. And that's what they need to do to catch up to be what we expect them to be. But this is what happens. They don't trade on a daily basis, exactly leveraged to Bitcoin at all. In fact, there's days where Bitcoin's up and the Bitcoin miners are down, and those days feel devastating. There's days where the reverse happens, or there's days where Bitcoin's up. Today was one of those days. If I go to today's big board, if I go back to while we were on the live stream, we had a little bit of a flash to the downside, but we're kind of right back to where we were. Today is a day where Bitcoin was up. This was a nice up day. So IBIT, which is BlackRock's ETF, was up 3.11%. But you'll see a lot of these Bitcoin miners, Iris Energy was up 10.75%. Core Scientific up 15, just under 15.6%. So those are, versus 3%, those are giant moves to the upside. And even, BitDeer up 7.6%. That's more than double to the upside. Hive just under 6%. That's pretty close to double. So, some of these were just right on. CleanSpark up 3%, Bitfarms up 3%, while Bitcoin was up 3%. So, nothing special there. But all in all, this was a strong day. So you get some of these days. My point of all this was, this is how a lot of people get beaten down and end up buying high and selling low with the Bitcoin miners. However volatile Bitcoin is, the Bitcoin miners are even more volatile. And because they don't necessarily follow Bitcoin on a daily basis, there's other variables that impact them. And, sometimes it's the overall markets having a bad day. And remember, these are equities. So, if the equities are getting beat up, sometimes even if Bitcoin's doing okay, the Bitcoin miners will have a bad day. Sometimes it's just profit taking or a sell-off, or, these are still all small companies. In the short term, they are manipulatable. So let's see. I just see somebody saying they disagree with me, so I want to read what they said here. Lant is saying, I disagree with you, Tom, with the approval of 8 Ethereum spot ETHs. The SEC, in essence, has legitimized to a certain degree crypto in general, and more specifically, all the other layer 1 blockchains. the specific concerns about Ethereum and the other layer 1 blockchains regarding QTs, he's saying, is virtually the same. Once Ethereum changed from proof of work to proof of stake, they became lumped in. So I don't think you're disagreeing with me. Maybe I didn't communicate myself properly. I that's what I'm saying. I do think that, I think that we're seeing this. This is the SEC to a certain extent. That's when I said earlier, maybe this battle is over. It seems like the SEC was, bent on controlling all of these. And I do think it's the proof of work versus the proof of stake was the big differentiator there. And, having passed all these, I was surprised they passed these. So I kind of have the same. I'm not sure, but it does seem like, are they giving up the fight here? Are we going to see less resistance from the SEC? And I can't say that with certainty, but this would definitely be an indicator. Saying yes across the board here was the opposite of what they've been telling us for a long time now. So that's what took me by surprise. Now, we did get a heads up. I think it was on Monday. They did start the chatter and back and forth between the SEC and the companies applying for these increased dramatically, and that was the big tell with the Bitcoin ETFs. They were helping them get their applications in order for them to get approved. And it seemed like Monday we kind of got the first heads up that was happening, and then bang, they approved them all. So I don't know. Is this going to now be, how many of these can the market, how much of this does the market have an appetite for? So, I don't think we're going to see 15 different coins or tokens with ETFs, but I'm less inclined to doubt the next one. And if Solana's next in line, and it seems like most people are saying Solana's next in line, and I see Midway, thanks for being a member, Midway, I think it will only be Bitcoin and ETH with ETFs for the next 1 to 2 years, because the SEC might want to see 1+ year of futures ETFs data as a requirement before maybe approving an actual ETF. So Solana won't be getting an ETF for a while. And again, this is from Midway One, for a while, because the SEC explicitly named Solana as a security in the Coinbase lawsuit, which is still ongoing. So, that's a good point, Midway. So I don't know what the answer to that is, right? I'm skeptical that we're going to get a slew of these now, but I was more than skeptical on the Ethereum ones, and they got approved. So I guess this falls under one of those, I guess nothing should surprise me, or I guess us here in the cryptocurrency land. And let's see if the SEC backs off. But that is a concern for Solana. But you saw, a lot of people mentioned it in the comments, and you can see there's an article. This is on CoinDesk where they're saying this could lead to a Solana. Ether Spot ETF approval would set a precedent as the first non-Bitcoin digital asset to be considered a commodity, raising expectations that Solana could follow the same path. So this is one person's opinion. I don't know what the answer to that is. Midway, I think that's a valid point. I don't know what the rush to all these ETFs are. Also, the other thing is, let's see what the appetite is for the Ethereum ETF. That will dictate to some extent even companies applying for more ETFs. There's also a pretty huge drop-off. Let me see if I can find. There's a pretty huge drop-off. You've got, I'll refresh this and make sure these are the latest and greatest numbers. Bitcoin's market cap is $1.3 trillion. Ethereum's market cap is approaching $500 billion. So Solana, even with the fantastic run it's a $75 billion market cap. So, That's what, 1/5 the size of Ethereum. I don't know that that matters, but I'm just pointing it out that, there's two monsters in this universe. Bitcoin is by far the monster at this time. And I know there's a lot of people that think that there's a big narrative out there that Solana's going to flip Ethereum at some point in the future. So I don't know that that's the case, so there's not too many coins that have big market caps. I mean, you can see you go from, a $500 billion at number 2, and a couple of these aren't even tokens. They're stable coins. So you got, Tether and USD. You really only have Binance's coin, Solana, and then it drops down to XRP at $29 billion. So, this falls off a cliff fast. Not that $29 billion is insignificant. Obviously, that's a massive amount of money, but versus the crypto universe, the vast majority of the crypto universe, they talk about Bitcoin dominance, but if you take out the stable coins and you add Bitcoin and Ethereum, the dominance number is insane. It is the vast majority of this entire universe. So we'll see if some of these others, and Solana has made massive, massive progress. So, it's moved up the list significantly, but we'll see if we can take that next step. I don't know. So today, just to take a look, Core Scientific does have 2 different warrants that trade. And you guys, here's the ticker, CORZW, and you can look into these. They're both very different in nature. Their expiration dates are way out into the future, 2028 or 2029, but they're 2 very different warrants in nature. But you can see this one was up almost 25% today. Now, Core was up over 15% today. So the W warrant was up 25%, and the CORZZ, this is a different stock warrant that they have. This was up 20%. So Core Scientific had a phenomenal day today. The stock warrants did even better than the stock did. So some of the other, from a political standpoint, and it's, that time in the 4-year cycle where politics start to, invade everything. So we're not a political channel here at all, but I think there's some positive things happening, even if it's just because it's an election year, we'll take all the help we can get. So this article says Trump will pull Biden into a pro-crypto camp. So Trump's come out a little bit more pro-crypto. And again, I'm not here to endorse anybody's politics on either side of this, but we got, 2 presidential candidates. One of them has jumped a little bit pro-crypto. And I think that in all likelihood, and this is Scaramucci, and we'll talk about who he is, saying that, he feels like because Trump has gone that way, that Biden's going to get forced to pull a little bit in that direction. And then I'm going to get to some legislation that passed this week that, well, it didn't pass. It passed through the House and probably won't get through the Senate, but that I think indicates the same thing. So Skybridge Capital founder Anthony Scaramucci, and at some point, and I don't remember what it was, they may say he held some position for a very short period of time in the Trump administration, and now, he's founded this Skybridge Capital. So here's basically what he said. There's 85 million people in this country that own crypto in one form or another. So I don't know if that number is true. I'm reading this quote from Anthony Scaramucci, and then he goes on to say there's 65 million dog owners. So he's trying to put things in perspective. So you have more crypto owners than you have dog owners. Scaramucci, who also briefly served as the White House Director of Communications, so I guess that's what it was. So I think Biden administration is looking at polling data and recognizing that younger people, and then, he names a bunch of other groups, are basically pro-crypto, and it may make sense to come a little bit more to the center on cryptocurrencies. So, I don't know if this is short-term stuff or long-term stuff, but for me, we'll take all the help we can get. If both parties are starting to come around and be a little more crypto-friendly, obviously that's more potential for, adoption. And that leads to a couple of things. So this article came out yesterday. U.S. House passes a bill banning Federal Reserve from issuing a CBDC. So it's interesting because Jerome Powell has come out in the past and, kind of framed this the opposite way. He's basically said, we are not going to issue a CBDC unless the House passes legislation that we should do that. So essentially, the Fed has said, we're not going to go out and do that on our own. That's the legislative branch. If they say to do it, we'll do it, but we're not doing it on our own. So Jerome Powell has said that in the past. So, here's a bill banning them from doing that, but he's already said, they're not going to do it unless they're told to do it. So, you can believe whoever you believe, but that this came out, and then it says the bill's prospects in the Senate are unclear, however. So this passed the House. I don't know if it'll pass the Senate. I don't know if it'll get vetoed. So I don't necessarily know that this will end up coming to fruition. I don't think it matters anyway. I don't think we're going to get a CBDC. This is my personal opinion anytime soon, if at all, here in the U.S. I happen to be in the U.S. So the other bill maybe was more important. The House passed a crypto bill that's crucial for the industry. Its future is murky, and they mean the bill's future is murky. So once again, the House passed new rules for the crypto industry on Wednesday. And I'm just going to interrupt this and just do Scott Richardson. Thank you for being a member. Thanks for the super chat. Is recommending a poll marathon to 25 next week. So before I do that poll, let's see where marathon is at right now. Marathon is at 21. So I don't mind doing that poll. We've had a lot of votes here. So we're pretty split. Is ETH going to take away from the Bitcoin ETFs? No pulled into first place here, 56% to 44%, but that is pretty close. So we'll end that. I'll just do a quick poll here on now. I believe in the U.S. Monday is a holiday, and so the market is closed. Correct me if I'm wrong. So in Marathon getting to $25, just it's been at a couple of times up here over 30. At the end of February, it got to almost 31. Back at the end of December, it got to over 31. So, 25 would not even be a local, well, I guess, from that perspective it would, but it would not take out these two highs it hit, in the last 6 months. So we'll just do a quick poll, and then I got another one that we can do after that. Okay, so the bill, which passed 279 to 136, probably won't become law because it has insufficient support in the Senate. So here again is a bill that passed in the House. It's not going to pass the Senate. For those of you not from the U.S., it's got to pass both the House and the Senate. And then even after that, it can get vetoed by the president. And I think, no, I don't think this was the one. One of these bills in the last week, he said he's going to veto. I don't think it was this one, though, but not sure it's ever even going to get to the president's desk. Okay, so FIT 21, which is the name of the bill, creates a path for cryptocurrencies to be exempt from many securities regulations if they achieve a sufficient level of decentralization, among other things. So this would be really kind of putting the SEC in a box. We were just talking about this, and this would move things more over, some of these over into the body that governs commodities versus the SEC. So that would open a lot of doors. Among other things, it does more than just that, but again, this is likely to not end up becoming law this time around, but let me see if it says it in here. Yeah. The one of the important things in this, and again, we're not politics, but politics is going to affect Bitcoin and cryptocurrency, in the short term and in the medium term. And one of the things that's happening, you'll see this was for all intents and purposes, this was some bipartisan legislation. It got 279 votes, and 71 House Democrats crossed party lines to support the bill. So you're starting to get some, with the amount of divisiveness we have in the U.S. between parties, to have 71 people cross party lines and vote for this bill, that's about as, bipartisan as it gets around here anymore these days. So I think that's pretty encouraging. And I think everybody's trying to loosen up as they see, the people want cryptocurrency. And there's an awful lot of regulations right now that need clarification. So, I'm not a regulations person, but sometimes in the absence of those, or with some of the existing laws on the books, there's certain adoption that can't happen or is unlikely to happen until we get clarity on some of this stuff. So this is what I'm looking for. Let's just get some clarity on all this. And there's a bunch of bills floating around. And I think, now that this has started, who knows when it's all going to get where it's going. But, the train has left the station. Eventually, it's going to get to where it's going. And we're going to get the clarity we need, I think, for all this stuff to start moving forward in the direction that we expect it to. And all that should be helping, Bitcoin, the Bitcoin miners, the cryptocurrency universe. So those are my thoughts on that. Will Marathon get to $25 next week? 64% are saying yes. And, the other question I had, a lot of these, let me just take a look at a few charts. So if you look at Marathon, I have a yellow dotted line on these charts where these companies closed last Friday. So this was, week over week. So you can see, Marathon ended up this week up 9%. So like a lot of these, a big up day on Monday. And then just like Bitcoin, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, down, down, down. But, it never got back to where it was. And now it had a nice up day. But it did not get anywhere near 25, but it did candle wick up to, let's see, $24.65 on, this was back on March 28th. So for Marathon to get to 25 would be a little bit, no, it wouldn't be a little bit. In my mind, really this, if I were to draw a line on this, and everybody's different, and this is more of an art than a science, but, somewhere in this range here, I think is some short-term resistance. So I think if it can pop out of this, I do think it'll break up to 25 or higher. And I think there's a lot of these poised to have a little bit of a breakout. And I want to look at CleanSpark, because CleanSpark, you'll see, ran up over $20 on Wednesday. So there was a big reversal on Wednesday. You'll see this kind of a hammer or reverse hammer. I don't remember which is which. We ran all the way up, and then the day reversed and we lost all of our gains. But this did run up. CleanSpark ran up over $20. It hasn't been there, since basically a month ago. So this would be another one where, somewhere, I don't know if you want to draw it here or here, there's some resistance. If it can break out of that, this was hitting, this got up over $24 in March. So these are the moves I'm expecting, but we need to see Bitcoin break out, and we need to see, whether or not the Bitcoin miners can continue this momentum. You're going to see, I showed you the 4.5 weeks of momentum. This week was a big green week for the Bitcoin miners. So we're about 5.5 weeks into moving in the right direction, but we're nowhere near where, I think all of us hope we're going in the long term. So we got to start breaking through some of these short-term lines of resistance. And I think we're poised to do that if Bitcoin has a decent week. Let's see if it holds its ground over the weekend. And again, in the U.S., this is a long weekend. Midway saying, Iron has so much room to run higher because its 40 exahash growth plan is in line with Riot's and Cleanspark's, but Iris's market cap is only like Cypher's now, which is only reaching 10 exahash this year. So I agree with that, Midway. And I'll just look at those real quick. If you look at Riot, Riot's now, stone's throw, call it $3 billion. And what's interesting, for 2023, for the first 10 months of the year, Riot was the largest Bitcoin miner by market cap. It was bigger than Marathon. And they have flip-flopped over the years many, many times as to which one was a larger market cap. But at this point, I don't think they will flip-flop again, because Riot is now at $3 billion. Marathon is now at $5.7 billion. That is approaching double Riot. Now, we'll see how each one of them does on executing their growth plans as to how that goes. But I don't see Riot catching Marathon. I think, after many, many years of them switching positions, I think this is now locked in, at least for the foreseeable future. But you've got Cleanspark then. So you had Riot at $3 billion. You've got Cleanspark at $4 billion. So to Midway's point, if these three companies do what they say they're going to do, they're all going to be somewhere between 30 and 32 exahash at the end of the year. Now, Cleanspark and Iris Energy have a nice track record of being very efficient as far as the number of Bitcoin mined per exahash that they have up and running. Riot, much less so. So we'll see what happens with Riot over time. So I would suspect, even if Riot gets better, and I do think they will improve, they had some machines that, ultimately they're getting rid of and swapping out for other machines. They do expect to improve their efficiency. All of these companies, two different types of efficiencies. Number one, less joules per terahash, meaning, using less energy, which is going to help keep the cost per coin down. But the other efficiency is how much, what uptime, how many Bitcoin are you mining per exahash? So most of these companies are in a pretty tight range now. They've all got very efficient going into the halving, with a few exceptions. Riot was one that was lagging behind. I think it's going to get better, but I don't know if it's going to catch these two. But the point of all this is you've got Riot at $3 billion, you've got Cleanspark at $4 billion, and then you've got Iron, which, if everybody does what they say they're going to do, should be mining, roughly the same amount of Bitcoin at the end of the year as those two at $1 billion. So that's about a triple or a quadruple to catch up to where those two are. Now, I don't know that it will catch all the way up. There's other factors involved. In particular, those two companies have, Riot has, 1.3 or whatever, some north of a $1 billion of liquidity and zero debt. I don't think Iris has any meaningful amount of debt either. I don't think Cleanspark has any meaningful amount of debt either. So they're all in good shape that way. But Cleanspark has improved their balance sheet significantly. They now have a very strong balance sheet, not as strong as Riot's. So, Iris doesn't hodl, so they don't have that stack. You got Cleanspark coming up on 6,000 Bitcoin, Riot over 8,000 Bitcoin. The big stack of all by far is Marathon, which is, I think, is over 17,000 Bitcoin. So, and then Iris doesn't hodl their Bitcoin. So from a market cap standpoint, I don't think they'll ever be apples to apples in the near term, but I do think they should make up a lot of that gap. So I do think there's a lot of room. I agree with Midway. In my opinion, there's a lot of room to the upside. I think those other companies' stocks are going to go up a bunch. So if those are going to go up, what's Iris going to do from here? That's my opinion. Looks like it's pretty close, but people seem to think Marathon's going to get to $25 next week, which would be a little bit of a breakout of the range that they've been trading in. So I'm just going to take a look at the 15-minute chart. I don't know what happened in this 15 minutes. We candle wicked way down, but recovered. So we're very, very sideways from, where the market closed. We do now have a 3-day weekend coming. So we'll have to see what happens. Weekends have been pretty uneventful for Bitcoin. So there have not been massive moves to the upside or the downside. Who knows what'll happen this weekend. But with that said, hopefully, for those of you who have a 3-day weekend, enjoy your long weekend. For those of you who don't, enjoy your regular weekend. I'm going to wrap it up, but I want to thank everybody. First, a special thanks, of course, to all the members. Much appreciated. Thanks to all the subscribers. And, if you smash the like button, I appreciate it. It does help out the stream. So thank you, everybody. And, I hope everybody has a fantastic weekend. I will do my, weekend update as always. And then let's see where we go next week. So everybody enjoy your weekend.